This is Dr. Paul Firnhaber here at Lincoln Disc and Nutrition in Lincoln, Nebraska. And it's Wednesday and time for 10 Minutes of Truth. Now, I have a very interesting article here that is going to go counter to a lot of the things that we've been told and even some of the things that I've believed for a while. And the article is called Mercury and Cognitive Dysfunction. Are fish part of the problem or part of the solution? So on May 9th, 2024, in the New York Times, there's an article that said presidential candidate Robert F. Kennedy say doctors found a dead worm in his brain. And the reason that this was brought up was because in 2010, Robert F. Kennedy was experiencing memory loss, mental fogginess so severe that a friend grew concerned that he might have a brain tumor. So they did an MRI and they discovered a cyst in his brain, but they could not really determine if this was caused by a worm or not, or a pork tapeworm larva. Now, Kennedy said that he had been through on a trip through South Asia the year before, and he might have contracted it then. But he didn't get any treatment for it, and the doctors were unsure whether that was even the case. However, at the same time, Dr. Gardner, the one who was treating him, said it was possible a worm would cause memory loss. However, severe memory loss is more often associated with another scare Mr. Kennedy said he had at the same time, which was mercury poisoning or mercury toxicity. So he had his mercury tested, and he had about 10 times the amount that he should. And where did all this mercury come from? Well, Kennedy said that he eats a lot of fish, a lot of tuna fish sandwiches. And so the issue is maybe, and maybe even probably, according to this article, it was the mercury levels that were causing his severe memory loss. So Dr. Gardner concluded with confidence that the high blood mercury levels from the fish caused severe memory loss. So, you know, Mr. Kennedy had some chelation therapy, and there was a Harvard environmental chemist who had not spoken to Mr. Kennedy but commented on the article, and she said that when mercury poison is clearly diet related, she would simply recommend that the person stop eating fish. So Kennedy also said that possibly stress, caffeine, and a lack of sleep were also part of the problem. Now, this seems almost like an open and shut case, but there's some things here that when you dig into the research that are not as they seem. So no mention was made of Mr. Kennedy's selenium status and intake. So one of the things that was not mentioned here or was not talked about was that but Mr. Kennedy has spoken publicly about was he has a health condition called spasmodic dysphonia. It's a neurological disorder that causes vocal cords to squeeze too close together. And that explains is the fact that he's hoarse and he almost has to talk in a whisper. So he had gone to Japan and underwent a procedure to implant titanium between his vocal cords to keep them from involuntarily constricting. Now, the authors that were looking at all of this, the people that were looking at all this, did a study And what they found was an article that showed that you can get neurotoxicity from titanium implants. In fact, there's been several studies to show that. And there's a study that was shown collected where tissue was collected around orthopedic implants and found a positive correlation between titanium concentration and the time of implant in the body. In fact, they did an experiment with rats in the same way, put titanium implants in or injected titanium nanoparticles in, and found, lo and behold, the rats started losing cognitive function. So the titanium was affecting inflammation and the immune system. Now, this article was not hard to find at all, the article about titanium. And what they were saying is that it was probably the titanium implant that was shedding off titanium particles into Robert Kennedy's brain and into Robert Kennedy's system that may have been causing the his memory loss and some of his other neurological dysfunction. Now, we think about that and we think, well, we've always been taught, that mercury is bad, and it is bad. I'm not saying that it's not, but there's a lot of evidence now that is not widely disseminated to show this, is that when you have adequate levels of selenium, selenium negates the effects of mercury. So this article goes on to say that most ocean fish contain high amounts of selenium. Marine fish, not only do they accumulate mercury, but they also carry large amounts of selenium. So like when you eat tuna, you eat selenium along with the mercury, and the selenium negates the effects of the mercury. And they said that when you have high levels of mercury, that there's this latent period between when the mercury affects you, when you eat the mercury, when you eat the fish with the mercury, and there it may be 3 or 4 months or longer before you start getting symptoms. And what the article is saying, that that's how long it takes for the mercury to basically use up the selenium in the body before you start getting symptoms. But when you're eating fish with selenium, with mercury, you're getting enough selenium to where that negates the effects of the mercury. So it says this study confirms the hypothesis that maternal ocean fish consumption provides substantial amounts of selenium to protect the risk of mercury exposure, even to the fetus, as long as there's enough selenium. In cross-sectional studies, moderate seafood consumption was correlated with lesser Alzheimer's disease neuropathology, although seafood consumption was also correlated with higher levels of brain mercury. These levels were not correlated with brain neuropathology. So the benefits of eating ocean fish outweigh the effects that we might get from the accumulation of mercury because of the increased selenium content. So the moral of this story and this article is that titanium implants, first of all, may not be as safe as we thought they were, and eating fish with mercury might be a lot better for us and a lot less dangerous than we thought it was. So I would say this: if we look at eating tuna and eating marine fish that's high in mercury, it probably isn't nearly as unsafe as what we've been told. In fact, the most important thing is our selenium status. Now, I'm not going to talk about selenium supplements today or where we get it. I'm going to wait till next week and we're going to talk about that. But I want you to understand that things aren't always as they seem. Before I read this study, and well, it's actually a collection of studies, I thought the same way. I thought, wow, I avoid, tuna, shark, things that are halibut, things that are high in mercury, simply because, it accumulates. But I never, ever thought about selenium status and those fish being high in selenium, which actually has a neuroprotective effect against mercury. So now, at this point, I think that I'm going to start eating tuna again, and I'm not going to feel bad about it. And I certainly don't want to get any selenium or any titanium implants in my body if I can help it. Because according to the studies in this article, they can cause problems. And that may have been what Mr. Kennedy's problem was, and not the mercury that he consumed. So next week, we're going to talk about a little bit more about selenium and its effect on the body and where to get it and the foods you get it from. So I hope you enjoyed this article. I hope you learned some things, and I hope I shook your tree a little bit in terms of some of the things that you believe. And we'll be back next week with another 10 minutes of truth. I'll see you then.